What the hell do you mean, we lost another forklift driver this week? Cassian Steele's voice echoed across the glass-walled office. He stood alone, facing the dashboard of live metrics on the screen. Warehouse 19 was once again behind on shipments, employee turnover had spiked, and customer satisfaction was tanking. He rubbed his jaw, eyes narrowing. That's the third one in 8 weeks. Cassian hadn't built the company from scratch, his father did that. But he'd taken over 5 years ago, expanded from 6 warehouses to 19 across 3 states, and modernized just about everything. Still, he'd always heard his dad say, "A company's only as strong as the people lifting the boxes, not the ones crunching numbers." Lately, Cassian hadn't been so sure he was living by that. He'd never visited Warehouse 19 in person. It was in a quiet industrial park on the edge of Dayton, managed by a guy named Troy who had always sounded confident on calls. Maybe a little too confident. Cassian had never met the floor workers' turnover was too high, and it was a big chain. Nobody knew the CEO's face. Especially not now, with his shaggy haircut, fake glasses, and warehouse uniform labeled Kyle. He decided to work the full night shift, undercover, as a new trainee. No cameras, no assistants, just him. Cassian arrived at 9:42 p.m. The parking lot was half full. The building looked tired, flickering lights outside, paint peeling near the loading dock. Inside, a woman in her 30s with tired eyes and a clipboard greeted him. "You Kyle?" she asked. "I'm Bianca, night shift supervisor." "Yeah," Cassian replied, voice low, trying to sound unsure of himself. "Supposed to start tonight." She didn't ask questions. Why would she? He was dressed like everyone else, worn boots, smudged company cap, and a laminated trainee badge. Bianca didn't smile. "All right, let's go. You got steel toes," he nodded. "Good. You'll ride with Elijah for the first half. Watch, don't lift unless he says so." Elijah was a tall guy with a limp and a polite nod. "You ever done shipping before?" he asked as they walked onto the warehouse floor. "Not really," Cassian said. "I'm just trying to get the hang of it." Elijah chuckled dryly. "You'll learn fast. Or you'll quit. Most do." The warehouse was chaos. Pallets were stacked too high, half the conveyor belts were down, and tired-looking workers moved like shadows in dim lighting. Forklifts beeped in tight aisles while fans roared overhead. Cassian glanced around, already sweating. "Why's it so packed?" he asked. "Short-staffed," Elijah muttered. "Again, Troy keeps hiring temps, but they don't last. Bianca picks up extra hours just to keep things from sinking." Cassian noticed several workers wearing braces knee, wrist, and back. One guy, maybe 60, leaned against a crate, catching his breath. "You okay?" Cassian asked him quietly. The man nodded but didn't speak. His shirt was soaked through. Cassian looked over at Elijah, who shook his head slightly. "He's on his 6th 12-hour shift this week. They cut the morning crew. Now night shift's doing double." Cassian's gut dropped. "You serious?" Elijah nodded. "Troy says budget, says we're lucky to have jobs." Cassian didn't speak, just followed Elijah through the aisles. Bianca barked orders over a busted walkie, organizing pallets for the morning. She didn't stop moving. Neither did anyone else. At midnight, 2 workers left. Cassian watched them walk out, shoulders slumped. "They quitting?" he asked. "One was supposed to leave at 10, Elijah said. "Others just done. Can't blame him. Troy won't even let folks take sick days without docking pay." Cassian's jaw tensed. "Doesn't HR cover that?" Elijah gave him a look. "HR? We haven't seen HR since the flood in March." By 2:00 a.m., Cassian's back ached. His hands were blistered. But what stopped him cold was when he saw Bianca leaning against a stack of boxes, eyes closed, mouth moving silently. Praying, he stepped closer. "Hey, you all right?" she jumped. "Yeah, I'm good, just trying to stay awake." He hesitated. "When was your last day off?" She laughed softly. 3 weeks ago. I'm covering for 4 people. And Troy says I'm lucky because I'm salaried." Cassian felt something twist in his chest. "Why don't you say something?" "To who?" Her eyes met his. "You think anyone up there cares?" He said nothing. An hour later, Troy finally showed up. Big guy, expensive jacket, loafers, walked in like he owned the place. "Why's this late?" he barked at Bianca, pointing at a delayed shipment. Bianca opened her mouth, but Cassian stepped closer to listen. "We're short," she said. "Again, and the conveyor's down." Troy rolled his eyes. "Fix it. Or I'll find someone who can." He turned and walked out, didn't even glance at the workers sweating behind him. Cassian clenched his fists. He looked around the warehouse, saw tired eyes, limping legs, and people who hadn't felt seen in a long time. He'd seen enough. Tomorrow night he was coming back, not as Kyle, as Cassian Steele. Cassian returned the next night just before 10. This time, he didn't park in the back with the temp workers. He pulled into the front lot in a black SUV and walked through the main entrance wearing a navy button-down, pressed slacks, and a company badge that read, Cassian Steele, CEO. The air changed the moment he stepped inside. The receptionist, who'd barely looked up the night before, stood straight, eyes wide. "I need the night shift team assembled in the break room," he said. "Now." She reached for the phone without hesitation. Cassian walked through the warehouse, past the same broken shelving, past the same jammed conveyor belt. Pallets were still stacked dangerously high. A fan in the corner rattled like it was about to fall. He passed a worker trying to lift a crate solo and stopped. "Where's your partner?" The man blinked twice. Called out, "No replacement." Cassian glanced at the crate label. It weighed over 70 pounds. "Put that down before you throw your back out." The worker obeyed without question. By 10:15, every night shift employee was in the break room, most leaning against walls, still in sweat-streaked uniforms. Bianca stood near the back, arms crossed, confused but alert. Elijah was there too, silent, eyes locked on Cassian. Troy arrived last, phone still in hand. He didn't acknowledge anyone as he walked in. Cassian waited until the last person stopped whispering before he spoke. "I worked this warehouse last night. Undercover." Name tag said Kyle. The silence was instant. A sound between a cough and a gasp came from someone near the vending machines. "I saw people pushing themselves past the edge. I saw injuries ignored. I saw a supervisor doing the job of 4 people without help, and a team trying to hold together a system that's been neglected." He turned to Troy. "And I saw a manager walk in, point fingers, and leave without lifting a hand." Troy opened his mouth. "Don't," Cassian said. "Not one word." He turned back to the workers. "This is not how we run Steele logistics. It never was, and it never will be." He looked at Bianca. "How long has that conveyor belt been down?" 3 weeks, she said. "We submitted 2 maintenance tickets. No one came." Cassian nodded once. "From now on, if equipment breaks, it gets fixed within 72 hours. If it's not fixed, it gets replaced. No exceptions." He looked around the room. "Who here has worked more than 5 consecutive shifts?" Several hands went up. "Starting tomorrow, no one works more than 5 days without 2 off. If you're covering for someone, you get overtime and a bonus, not just lip service." He walked to the whiteboard near the fridge. It had a printed list of monthly MVPs, all blank for the past 4 months. He turned to Elijah. "How long have you been here?" 8 years, Elijah said. "On and off, mostly nights." "You ever been recognized? Bonus, raise, anything?" Elijah shook his head. Cassian looked at Bianca. "What about you?" "Not since my 2nd year," she said. "That was 5 years ago." Cassian turned to Troy. "You're done." Troy blinked. "Excuse me." "You heard me. You're relieved of duty, effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Troy's mouth moved, but no words came out. 2 security officers entered a moment later. One gestured toward the exit. Troy's face turned red, but he didn't resist. Once the door shut, Cassian turned back to the group. "Bianca is now acting warehouse manager. Starting tonight, she'll receive full manager salary and authority, and she'll be hiring a new assistant immediately." Bianca's jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. "You've earned it," Cassian said. "You've held this warehouse together with duct tape and willpower. That ends now." He looked around the room. "We're hiring 10 more night shift workers, not temps, full hires, benefits from day 1. Until then, we'll reduce output expectations to match staffing." No more pushing beyond safe limits. A hand went up in the back. A young woman with grease on her sleeve. What about complaints? HR doesn't answer calls. From now on, all complaints go through a new internal hotline. Staffed 24/7, you'll get that number by tomorrow. Anonymous or not, every issue gets logged and reviewed by corporate directly. Another worker, this one older with a brace on his wrist, stepped forward. What about paid time off? We're told it's discouraged during peak. That's illegal, Cassian said, and it ends tonight. PTO is a right, not a suggestion. Bianca will enforce it, and any retaliation for using it will result in immediate termination. He paused, letting it all land. I didn't come here to make speeches. I came because I lost sight of what matters, but I'm here now. And I'm not leaving, he nodded once. Break's over. Anyone who feels unsafe or unfit to work tonight can clock out now, full pay, no questions asked. Otherwise, let's get back to it. We rebuild from here. As workers filed out, a few nodded at him. One woman gave a quiet thank you under her breath. Cassian stayed behind with Bianca. You all right? He asked. She looked at him cautious. You're really not just here to boost PR? No, Cassian said. I'm here because this place is broken. And I can't fix it unless I see it the way you do, she hesitated. Then we've got a long road ahead. I know, he said, and I'll walk it. They stepped back onto the warehouse floor. Cassian rolled up his sleeves. Show me what's been buried the longest. Bianca didn't hesitate. Follow me, she said. You need to see the cold storage unit. It's been leaking for months. We've been shifting inventory by hand to avoid spoilage. Troy said it wasn't worth the repair. Cassian followed her across the east wing. The cold storage unit stood behind two plastic curtain strips. Inside, the air was damp and uneven. Ice had formed in one corner while the opposite side was nearly warm to the touch. Cassian stepped inside. This is a food safety risk, he said flatly. Yes, Bianca said. And if we lose another load, we eat the costs. I'll have a tech team here at 8 a.m. If it can't be fixed by end of day, it gets replaced. Bianca nodded. As they stepped back out, Elijah approached. One more thing, he said quietly. Some of the forklifts, they're past inspection dates. Troy blacked them out with marker. Cassian's face darkened. Where are they? Dock 2, I'll show you. Cassian followed him through a side corridor. Two forklifts sat idle. Cassian ran his finger across the sticker. The expiration date had been altered, not even well. Both offline as of now, Cassian said. I'll have replacements sent from Warehouse 4 by tomorrow night. Elijah gave a short nod. Appreciate it. Cassian met his eyes. I appreciate you. And I'm sorry it took this long for someone to say that. Elijah didn't answer, but his shoulders straightened as he turned away. Cassian stood alone for a moment in the hum of the warehouse. The work ahead was massive. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't looking at numbers on a screen. He was looking at people, and he was finally listening. Cassian stayed on site for the rest of the week. No press, no meetings, no delegation. He worked quietly out of a makeshift office near the loading dock, spending his hours walking the floor, asking questions, listening more than talking. The first 2 days were chaos adjustments to schedules, equipment pulled offline, and temp workers phased out without replacements ready. Orders were delayed and some clients were beginning to notice, but Cassian held the line. Let the customers call, he told Bianca on a Thursday morning as they reviewed the backlog. We can explain a delay, we can't explain broken people. She didn't argue. That night, the floor was quieter than usual. Not because there was less to do, but because people weren't rushing to exhaustion. It was a fragile balance, short-staffed and still under pressure, but there was a shift in posture. People moved like they were being watched, yes, but also like they were being noticed. Still, not everyone welcomed the change. I don't get why we're catering to them, said a voice behind Cassian as he passed through receiving. It came from a man breaking down boxes near the recycling chute. He was tall, mid-40s, with a permanent scowl and a badge that read Martin. They're your team, Cassian said without turning. You think treating them better is catering, Martin scoffed. They're lazy. Half of 'em call off if their shoelace snaps. You give 'em an inch, they'll take your boots. Cassian stopped walking. How long have you been here? 7 years, Martin said. Worked every shift this place has. And how many people have quit on your shift in the past 3 months? Martin hesitated, then shrugged. People quit. That's life. No, Cassian said. That's culture and you're part of it. Martin picked up another box and slammed it into the bin. Look, I get it. You're trying to fix the place, but you don't know what it's like when you've been carrying the slack for years. You start cutting corners just to get through the night. Cutting corners is one thing, Cassian said. Calling your coworkers lazy while blaming them for being overworked, that's something else. Martin turned, jaw tight. You gonna fire me for telling the truth? No, Cassian said. I'm going to watch, closely. If I hear one more report of you talking down to someone, you're done. If you're here to work, work. If you're here to poison the team, you can leave now. Martin didn't respond, but his eyes narrowed. Cassian walked away without waiting for an answer. Later that night, Cassian joined Bianca and Elijah near the back bays. They were inspecting a pallet that had collapsed during transfer, no injuries, but a dozen broken packages. We need to start retraining on stacking standards, Bianca said, crouching beside the toppled load. Some of the newer guys are rushing to keep up. I'll approve a safety instructor, Cassian said. One from outside. I want people learning the right way, not shortcuts passed down from whoever stuck around the longest. Elijah looked up. You planning to stay on site much longer, as long as I need to? You're not just cleaning house, Elijah said. You're rebuilding it. I have to. I let it rot this far. Bianca stood, brushing dust from her pants. You didn't create all of this. No, Cassian said, but I looked away. That's just as bad. A crash sounded from the far end of the aisle, metal against concrete. The three of them ran toward it. They found a young man on the ground beside a tipped dolly, a split box of canned goods scattered around him. You all right? Cassian asked, kneeling. The man nodded, winded. I slipped, I'm okay. You sure? Bianca asked. Yeah, just landed weird, no pain, just startled. Cassian stood and scanned the floor. There was a wet streak across the aisle, clear liquid trailing from an unsealed container. Who cleared this path? He asked. No one answered. Bianca turned to the nearest team lead, a woman named Riene. Was this marked? No, Riene said. I told Martin to inspect before we moved that shipment. He said he did. Cassian nodded once. Get him. 10 minutes later, Martin arrived, arms crossed. You told Riene the path was clear, Cassian said. I checked it, Martin replied. Must have missed something. You missed a leaking container and someone nearly got hurt. Martin didn't flinch. He's fine, it happens. No, Cassian said. It doesn't happen, not if you do your job. Martin looked at Bianca, then at Elijah. This warehouse has been chaos for weeks. You expect perfection now. I expect responsibility, Cassian said. You had one task, verify the path was safe. You signed off on it. Martin opened his mouth, then closed it. You're done, Cassian said. Pack your things. You're firing me over a spill. I'm firing you for negligence, for disrespecting your team, and for creating a safety hazard that could have been much worse. Martin stared at him. You've got no idea who's going to cover my shift. I'll find someone who doesn't treat safety like an inconvenience. Cassian turned to Bianca. Make sure his badge is deactivated before he clears the parking lot. Martin left without another word. By the end of the week, 2 more employees had been quietly removed, one for falsifying equipment logs, another for repeated verbal abuse toward younger workers. Cassian didn't make announcements. He didn't need to. Word traveled fast. On Saturday night, he called a meeting in the break room. It wasn't mandatory, but nearly everyone showed. The room was cramped, warm from the bodies, but quiet. Cassian stood at the front, no notes, no screen behind him. I'm not here to give another speech, he said. You've heard enough of those. I'm here to ask a question. He paused. What do you need to do this job well? At first, no one spoke. Then a hand rose from the back. A woman named Jasmine, new but sharp, stepped forward. Better lighting in the back rows. We've had 3 near misses just this week. Cassian nodded. Done. Another voice. More gloves. The cheap ones tier after one shift. Approved, then more followed. A mop station near Dock 6, clearer labeling on the inbound bins. A second microwave we lose time waiting to eat. Cassian wrote each one down. You'll get updates on all of these within the week, he said. And if something gets missed, I want to know. He looked over the room. I can't promise perfection, but I can promise we're not going back. You're not invisible anymore. As people filed out, Elijah lingered. You're really sticking around, huh? Cassian nodded. I'll be here until I'm sure the fixes stick. You ever think about what this place could be if the right people stayed? I think about it every night. Elijah crossed his arms, then keep showing up. That's how you keep the right people. Cassian extended a hand. Elijah shook it. As the doors closed behind the last worker, Cassian stood alone in the empty break room. The list in his hand was longer than he expected, but it was honest. And for the first time, so was the work. By the following Monday, the warehouse was running slower but more deliberately. Errors were down, people were more cautious, they still looked tired but not broken. Cassian noticed the difference not in how fast they moved but in how often they looked up. Met his eyes, spoke without flinching. He'd stayed longer than intended, living out of a hotel 15 minutes down the road. He kept his presence low-key, no speeches, no press releases, no photographer tailing him around. He wasn't interested in optics. He was interested in whether things were actually changing. That night, he arrived just before the shift change. It was raining hard and the parking lot was already flooding near the far entrance. He stepped inside, shook off his coat and glanced toward the corner where Elijah usually clocked in. The spot was empty. "Where's Elijah?" he asked Renee, who was now assistant supervisor. She glanced up from her tablet. "His kid's sick. He called in 2 hours ago, first time he's done that in years." "Did he ask for it off or just inform you?" he asked, she said. "I told him to stay home." "You said we fix the culture. That starts with trust." Cassian nodded. "Good call." He crossed the floor and stopped near Dock 4, where a new hire named Leo was struggling with a shrink-wrap spool. The plastic kept catching on the pallet corners, bunching. "Having trouble?" Cassian asked, crouching. Leo looked embarrassed. "I watched the video twice, still can't get it tight enough." "Forget the video," Cassian said. "Watch." Cassian took the spool, stepped to the edge of the pallet, and showed him how to anchor it low, then work his way up in a diagonal pull, keeping the tension even. When he finished, he handed the spool back. "It's not about speed," he said. "It's about getting it right the first time," Leo exhaled. "Thanks, I didn't think anyone would bother." "You're not cargo," Cassian said. "You're crew." As he stood, he noticed Bianca near the inventory terminal, tapping through data with a look of concern. "Something wrong?" he asked. She gestured to the screen. "We've got a backlog on the pharmaceutical units. They're temperature sensitive and we're already behind. We need 2 more people to pick and load tonight or we'll miss tomorrow's carrier window. Anyone available to stay past shift?" She shook her head. "No one cleared for overtime and I'm not pulling favors," Cassian considered. "I'll go, who else?" She hesitated, then called across the aisle. Rosa, a woman in her 50s with a thick braid and sharp eyes, approached. "You still certified for Pharma Bay?" "Of course." Bianca looked at Cassian. "If you go, she goes. No one runs it solo." Rosa raised an eyebrow. "You sure corporate's ready to sweat again?" Cassian pulled his gloves from his back pocket. "Let's find out." They worked together for 2 hours. Rosa moved methodically, checking expiry dates, scanning each unit twice. Cassian kept pace, loading crates onto temperature-controlled pallets. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, and Rosa never once slowed down for him. "We had a manager once who used to scream if the wrap wasn't perfect," she said without looking up. "Didn't last. Not because he wasn't tough, because he didn't listen." Cassian nodded. "Tough's easy, listening's harder." They finished the last load just before the window closed. As the final shipment rolled out, Rosa looked at him, sweat on her brow. "You're not bad for a suit, but let me ask you something." "All right. When you go back to your office, your real office, what happens to this place?" Cassian was quiet for a moment. No more silos. Bianca and Rihanna will run this place, but they'll have a direct line to my desk. I'll be reviewing weekly reports from them personally operations, morale, safety, and once a month I'll come in unannounced, not to check up, to work. That'll rattle some cages, Rosa said. Good, Cassian replied. Some cages need shaking. Later that night, Cassian stepped into the small HR office tucked in the back. It had gone unused for weeks, dust on the desk, a printer with blinking errors. He powered it up, entered his credentials, and accessed the employee feedback portal. A few new entries had come in since the hotline went live. He read each one carefully. They weren't complaints, they were suggestions. One came from a worker named Darren. Would be easier to stay hydrated if we had another water station near Bay 6. Takes too long to walk around every time. Another from Rihanna. We need a proper place to store PPE. Right now it's just a bin in the break room. He forwarded both to Bianca with a note. Order whatever's needed, no approvals required. Just as he shut down the computer, his phone buzzed. It was a forwarded video from Bianca, no subject line. He opened it. Footage from 20 minutes earlier, captured on a worker's phone. It showed Martin, the same man who'd been fired, pacing just outside the fence perimeter. He was shouting something, not clearly audible, but his gestures were aggressive. Security had already been called by the time the video ended. Cassian walked straight to the night security office and found the supervisor on duty. I want a report filed and reviewed by morning, he said. We need better lighting in that back lot and a camera facing the fence. I can have someone here by first light, the supervisor replied. Make it happen. Cassian returned to the floor. The clock read 3:26. Most of the team was focused, quieter than usual. He passed a group near Bay 2, Rosa, Leo, and a few others talking in low voices. They didn't stop working, but they looked up when he passed. You ever sleep? Rosa asked. Cassian stopped. Not when there's work to finish. You're not like the others who come through here, she said. Most stay for a day, say a few things, then vanish. I've vanished before, he admitted. That's done now. You'll be tested, Rosa said. You know that, right? Good, he said. I'm not afraid of tests. He left before sunrise, boots muddy, shirt damp from hours on the floor. The rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy. As he stepped into the parking lot, he saw two workers leaning against the wall, sharing a cigarette, laughing quietly. He didn't interrupt. The next week brought changes, not immediate miracles, but steady improvements. The broken conveyor was replaced. A new lighting grid was installed over the rear aisles. Bianca brought in a part-time warehouse medic to handle short-term injuries and prevent long-term ones. It wasn't a grand fix, but it was a step. The following Friday, Cassian stood in the warehouse's front office with Bianca and Rihanna. They watched as a new cohort of hires arrived, 6 new employees, all permanent contracts. Each one was greeted with a handshake and walked through orientation by someone who'd been there more than 5 years. They're nervous, Rihanna said, watching through the glass. They'll be all right, Bianca replied. They've got people now. Cassian didn't say anything. He didn't need to. This wasn't his moment. It was theirs. He stayed until evening, then walked the floor one last time, not to inspect. Just to see. Rosa was training Leo on the new sealing machine. Elijah was back, smiling faintly as he unloaded a fresh shipment of gloves. The cold storage unit was humming evenly, re-insulated and fully repaired. He paused near the exit, looked back once. Bianca approached. You heading out? For now, she nodded. You'll be back? Yeah, he said. But you won't need me the same way next time. She looked across the warehouse, then back at him. We'll still keep a spot open, just in case, he smiled. Not the polished CEO grin, a real one, quiet, earned. Then he stepped outside into the dusk. No camera followed, no applause waited, but behind him the warehouse kept moving, this time the right way.